When did I become an adult? There wasn't a ceremony, no sudden moment with music swelling in the background, no announcement or recognition. But I remember the night I came home, exhausted, after a long day of work and bills and worry, and quietly made myself dinner. I sat in silence at the small kitchen table, spooning lukewarm soup from a chipped bowl. No one asked me how I was doing. No one was coming to fix things. And for the first time, I didn't expect them to. That was the moment. Not glamorous, not tragic, just still. I realized I was no longer waiting for permission to grow up, or for someone else to take the lead. I was it. I was the one steering the wheel, whether I liked it or not. We often imagine adulthood as arriving at a certain age, or after a milestone, graduation, a job, a move. But sometimes it arrives in quieter ways, paying rent even when you're scared, staying when you want to run, comforting yourself when no one else can. Some people feel like adults at 16, others at 40, and some never quite feel it at all. That's okay. Adulthood isn't a fixed identity. It's a series of small decisions made in quiet courage that say, I'm here. I'll keep going. So if you're wondering whether you've become an adult yet, maybe ask this instead. When did I begin to carry myself through the hard parts? And if the answer is just recently, that's more than enough. Sometimes we wait for a moment to feel like an adult, one we can point to and say, there, that's when everything changed. But adulthood is rarely that clear. More often, it's a soft unfolding. Whose dream was I chasing? There wasn't a moment of clarity, no big realization, no dramatic turning point. But I remember sitting alone one evening, staring at everything I thought I wanted, and feeling nothing at all. The job title, the goals checked off, the praise that once felt like oxygen. I had reached what I thought was the dream, but the silence inside me was louder than the applause. Somewhere along the way, I'd started chasing something shiny, something that looked right from the outside. But it didn't come from me, not fully. It came from the expectations I absorbed, from the voices that said, this is success, from a younger version of me who didn't yet know who they were. And I followed it, because that's what we're taught to do. Set a goal, chase it. Don't question the path. But what if the dream was never really mine? What if it was a costume I outgrew? There's grief in realizing that. Grief in letting go of a story you worked so hard to live. But there's freedom, too. Because once I stopped chasing what looked good, I began listening for what felt true. It was quieter, slower, less impressive to others, but it was mine. So if you're feeling disconnected from the life you built, ask gently, not with shame, whose dream is this? And if the answer isn't yours, you're allowed to begin again. The life I didn't choose. There wasn't a dramatic detour, no big fork in the road, no bold decision to walk away from one thing and toward another. But still, I looked around one day and realized this wasn't the life I thought I'd live. Not in a tragic way, just in a quiet, almost imperceptible shift. It wasn't the city I imagined, not the job I dreamed of, not the version of love I once wrote stories about. I used to think I'd know when I was settling, that it would feel like giving up, but it didn't. It felt like small, reasonable choices made one after another, It felt like responsibility, like realism, like being practical. And maybe it was. Maybe I needed this path to learn things the dream version of my life never could have taught me. But some days, there's still a pause, a wondering, a quiet ache for what might have been. If I'd chosen differently, if I'd dared more, if I'd had the map. But there is no map, only this moment, this breath, this life I'm living, imperfect, unexpected, real. And maybe the life I didn't choose still taught me something important, that growth doesn't only come from our dreams, it comes from the detours, the staying, the making peace with where you are, even when it's not where you meant to be. So if you're living a life that looks different than you planned, know this. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's yours now. And that's enough. Real growth is small and quiet. No dramatic scene, no spotlight or standing ovation. But I remember the morning I didn't spiral after bad news. The night I spoke gently to myself instead of tearing myself apart. The day I said no and didn't apologize for it. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like stillness, like breath, like something shifting, subtly. I used to think growth would feel loud, obvious, like a rising sun everyone could see. But more often, it arrives like this. In the way you pause before reacting, in the way you show up, tired but still kind, in the way you forgive yourself for being human. No one claps for these moments. They don't look like progress from the outside, but inside, something is rearranging, healing, strengthening. Real growth doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't ask for attention. It just happens. In the quiet choices you make over and over when no one's watching. So if you're waiting for proof that you're changing, look closer. It might already be happening, not in fireworks, but in your everyday courage. Have I ever truly been on my own side? There wasn't a single moment. No brave declaration in front of a mirror. No sudden surge of confidence that rewrote everything. But I remember the times I stayed silent, when I should have spoken up. The moments I bent myself to fit what others needed, while quietly disappearing. The harsh thoughts I fed myself when no one else was around to criticize me. For so long, I thought loyalty meant showing up for everyone else, pleasing, performing, proving. But I never asked, what would it mean to show up for me? It's strange how easily we become our own worst critic, how quickly we defend others, but not ourselves, how often we forgive someone else, but replay our own mistakes on loop. I used to think self-love had to be loud. Bubble baths, bold affirmations, big energy. But sometimes it's softer than that. It's saying, that was hard, and you did your best. It's choosing rest over punishment. It's standing by yourself when no one else does. I'm still learning how to be on my own side, not just when I succeed, but especially when I stumble. Especially when I feel like I've failed. So if you've ever asked yourself, why don't I feel supported? Maybe ask gently, when was the last time I supported me? And let that be the beginning not of perfection, but of return. The days I hated myself. There wasn't a meltdown. No shouting, no visible cracks, but I remember the quiet, a silence so sharp it sounded like blame. The way I looked in the mirror and felt like I didn't belong in my own face. The way I replayed conversations, finding new ways to twist my words into shame. The way I apologized just for existing too loudly or not enough. It didn't happen all at once. Self-hate creeps in slowly. It disguises itself as humility, perfectionism, just being honest. But underneath, it's a constant voice that says, "You're not enough. You never were." I thought if I was harder on myself, I'd become better, more lovable, more acceptable. But the truth? I only became smaller, quieter, disconnected from the softness I used to know. And still, I showed up, even when I didn't believe I deserved to. Even when the ache of being myself felt unbearable. Now, I look back with tenderness, not because I'm fully healed, but because I know how brave it is to keep living when you feel unworthy of love. If today is one of those days for you, when your reflection feels like a stranger, when your thoughts turn cruel, let this be a whisper. You are not the voice that shames you. You are the one still standing in spite of it, and that is something to love. On growing older. There wasn't a defining moment, no grand realization, just small signs, subtle shifts that crept in quietly. The way silence started to feel like peace, not emptiness. The way I no longer needed to explain my joy or justify my boundaries. The way I began to care less about being impressive and more about being real. Getting older didn't look the way I thought it would. It wasn't all wisdom and grace. Sometimes it was forgetting names. Sometimes it was grief, watching the world change without asking my permission. Sometimes it was waking up with new aches, physical, emotional, invisible. But there were softer things too, like laughing at yourself, like knowing when to walk away, like realizing that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it just means living anyway. No one tells you that growing older is also about becoming gentler with yourself, with the past, with the people you once tried so hard to understand. So if aging feels like a slow unraveling some days, let it. Because maybe that's not falling apart. Maybe it's just loosening the grip on who you thought you had to be.